Well, welcome to today's Salt Lake City Council formal meeting. The City Council has returned to virtual public meetings to help reduce the transmission of COVID-19 due to the rate of COVID-19 cases in the city and elsewhere. This change in meeting attendance is a precautionary measure for the safety of the public and city employees and is based on the latest reports from the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. We are continuing to monitor the situation in advance of each meeting, and the council will return with hybrid or in-person meetings when appropriate. We are truly grateful for the public's patience, but most importantly, we are glad you are joining us today. We're going to start off with the Pledge of Allegiance. So we will begin with a moment of silence as we recite the Pledge of Allegiance.
And I'm sorry, Mr. Chair, Councilmember Ferris was in the meeting. He was just in as an attendee, so he is here.
Well, he's been moved over then, huh?
Yes, well, he should
Good.
be.
Good for him. Welcome, Councilmember
Sorry
Ferris.
about that.
No, you're good. For the public comment opportunities today, we are accepting your comments through WebEx. And for those whose only option is to call in, staff will be monitoring a separate telephone line. Before we begin moving through our agenda, I want to mention and review our rules of decorum. These are guidelines that the City Council has always had in place to help our meeting progress in an orderly, civil, efficient way. These help us move through the agenda and give everyone the opportunity to voice their opinions without feeling intimidated. In order to achieve this, our rules of decorum begin from the moment you arrive into our virtual meeting. The council want to make sure that everybody understands the council respects all points of view and we welcome new insights. While giving your comments, please be respectful. Avoid yelling, profanity, or making racial slurs, obscene, or defamatory remarks. If you use profanity during your comment, your line will be muted, and if any comments reach a level of disrespect, I will ask you to be muted and you will be forfeited of your opportunity to address the council tonight. If you feel the need to use profanity to express your point, you're welcome to email council members or call our comment line. In addition, our staff will request for your name during the registration process. To limit disruption, your name cannot include a message or violate our rules of decorum. If your registered name doesn't meet this requirement, then our staff will use the chat feature to gather that information from you. I believe that Isaac Canedo from our staff is helping to moderate the meeting and will be messaging with the attendees to coordinate on any questions with your commenting registration. Staff is handling a number of tasks, so please limit messages to technical issues and minimal changes to your registration. If you'd like to send any comments to the City Council, please feel free to and mail them to P.O. Box 145476, Salt Lake City, Utah 84114. You can email us at council.comments@slcgov.com or call us at 801-535-7654. We're going to move straight into item A4, which we will look to approve the work session and formal meeting minutes of Tuesday, August 24th, 2021, and meeting minute excerpts from relating to the intention to designate Central Business Improvement Area 2022 actions from Tuesday, July 20th, 2021. I'll look for a motion.
So moved.
Second.
A motion by Councilmember Dugan, second by Councilmember Ferris. Any questions in regards to this? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Do we need to roll call that?
Roll call.
Let's do that. Councilmember Wharton,
Yes.
Councilmember Dugan,
Yes.
Councilmember Mono,
Yes.
Councilmember Ferris,
Yes.
and I don't see Councilmember Valdemoros. So that
Mr. Chair,
passes.
we're having trouble getting her the right link. Sorry about that.
No problem. So she's trying to get in, but that passes with everybody except for Councilmember Valdemoros, who's not quite here yet, and Councilmember Fowler, who's absent. We're going to move on to the public hearings. Taylor Hill and our staff will be calling the names of those who wish to comment and unmuting lines. Once we open the public comment, Taylor will announce 3 names at a time so that the people can have some notice to be prepared to speak. When it is your turn to speak, Taylor will say your name, unmute your line, and you may begin. Please state your name and the 2-minute timer will start. At the 2-minute mark, the host will announce time and your microphone will be muted. If you're unable to finish your comment, please refer to your chat screen. Our staff will post our contact information. If you do not wish to speak, please message our staff to let them know, or when the host states your name, please let us know that you are here to listen. Our first public hearing includes 3 grant applications, items B1 through B3 that are being heard as one public hearing. Now, before we begin taking comments, I will first turn the time over to Sylvia Richards, Council Staff Policy Analyst, to give a short introduction.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The city applies for and receives grants which help to support and fund some city programs. Each grant application is reviewed and then receives a public hearing, which gives the public an opportunity to comment on them. Tonight, there are 3 grants, as you mentioned. First is the 2021 Voca Victims of Crime Act grant, which would fund for existing and part-time and full-time victim advocate positions, as well as a victim advocate dog, which provides comfort for victims of traumatic events such as sexual or physical violence. Second is the 2021 Law Enforcement Mental Health and Wellness Act grant, which would fund training for employee wellness and peer support teams, instructor fees for family wellness workshops, chaplain uniforms, and program evaluation. Third is the 2022 State of Utah Asset Forfeiture Grant, which would be used to fund confidential informant funds to enhance investigations in narcotics-related cases. And that is all for tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Sylvia. Appreciate it. So, Taylor, let's start with our first public comment.
Council Chair, it looks like we do not have anyone here to speak this evening to these items.
Okay, seeing no comments this evening on items B1 through B3, I'll look for a motion.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Councilmember Mono.
see a motion sheet, but I hope I'm doing this right. I'll move that we close the public hearing and refer these items to a future consent agenda.
Second.
A motion by Councilmember Mono and second by Councilmember Ferris. Is there any discussion? We'll roll call this. Councilmember Wharton,
Yes.
Councilmember Dugan,
Yes.
Councilmember Mono,
Yes.
Councilmember Ferris,
Yes.
and I am a yes.
And I'm a yes too.
Oh, yes, Councilmember Valdemoros, welcome. Thank you
Thank
for
you.
chiming in.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yes,
Not related to the motion, but related to that previous item. May I ask just a quick question?
of course.
I was wondering if the administration could just give us a sort of update about which grants we actually received and which ones we didn't receive periodically, because I know we hear these, but we don't necessarily hear that they were awarded to us or not.
Yeah, we can definitely do that. We'll work with council staff.
That would be great, just to keep track.
Great. I just want to make it clear that that motion passes with everyone being unanimous on it. Our second public hearing is item B4, and it's regarding a resolution for intention to designate Central Business Improvement Area 2022. Do we have any, I'm going to turn this over first before we take comments to Russell Weeks, our council staff policy analyst, to give a short introduction.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. For the viewing public, this is the public hearing on a notice of intention to create a special assessment area for the downtown Salt Lake City. If it's created, the rough borders of the assessment district would be North Temple, 400 South, 300 East, and the eastern boundary of I-15. The assessment area is essentially an area where commercial property owners tax themselves to pay for economic promotion activities. In the past, those have included the farmers market, closing Main Street on weekends for entertainment purposes, and the original core Street Ambassadors program. A significant amount of the assessment goes to pay for that core program. Anyone can speak for or against creating the assessment area, But the real test of whether the area will be created will come when and if property owners submit written protests to the city by November 8th. If 40% or more of the property owners that make up the aggregate total value of the downtown properties object to creating the district cannot be created. That's all I have for tonight.
Thank you, Russell. Much appreciated. Taylor, or do we have any public comments in regards to this?
Council Chair, we do not.
Okay. Seeing no public comment, I'll look for a motion.
Mr. Chair, I move that the council close the public hearing.
Second.
A motion by Councilmember Wharton and second by Councilmember Dugan. Is there any other discussion? Okay. Councilmember Mono, are you in favor or opposed to this
Yes.
motion? Councilmember
favor.
Wharton,
Yes.
Councilmember Dugan,
Yes.
Councilmember Ferris,
Yes.
Councilmember Valdemoros,
Yes.
and I am a yes as well. The motion passes. Our third public hearing is item B5 regarding a rezone at Nielsen Estates at 833 West Hoyt Place and 834 West 200 North. Before we begin taking public comments, we'll turn first the time over to Brian Fulmer, Council Staff Policy Analyst, to give a short introduction. Brian.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is a proposed rezone for the properties you mentioned, changing the current zoning from R1 5000 and R1 7000 to SR3 for a potential planned development that includes preserving the existing home at 834 West 200 North. I want to make note that the request is only for the rezone of the properties and is not tied to a specific development proposal. That's my introduction.
Thank you, Brian. Taylor, let's start with our first public comment.
Okay, it looks like we have about 6 people here to speak to this item. The first of which will be Pachuco Lataro, followed by Michelle Watts, and then Nigel Swaby. Pachuco, you are now unmuted.
Hello, yes, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes, thank you. I'm here tonight, Pachuco Lautaro with the Brown Berets. We demand that you guys oppose this rezone ordinance. Back in March, the property owner showed no concern about how his luxury homes that he's planning to be built will negatively impact our community. And the Planning Commission as well just ignored our concerns as well. Because the rent and the mortgage rate will increase, putting working class, indigenous, Chicano, Polynesian, and Black families at risk of being pushed out of the community, as we are seeing in the west side of the community happening right now. You know, we make our community beautiful, you know, and just ask that please respect our neighborhood. You know, this should be a park or a garden for the people that live here. We're just demanding that you all oppose this, please. Thank you.
And next we will have Michelle Watts, followed by Nigel Swaby, and then Kiko Jones. Michelle, you're now unmuted.
Thank you. I just wanted to say, please keep this old home. The verbiage on this project is too wishy-washy. Nothing is tied to a firm plan, and we keep giving developers a crumb, and they end up wanting the whole cake. This home's going to get knocked down. Stop knocking down our historic homes. Stop buying them up and letting them come into despair so that you can say you have a hardship and need to tear it down. Keep our history and keep our treasures safe. We need to ban developers from certain areas and stop letting homes being scooped up by investment companies to rent or burn to the ground and build garbage. I would not want a road between my house and my neighbors. When the property owners bought their homes, they did their due diligence. There was no road. This is too harsh of environment change to push on without all the 200 North neighbors agreeing. Do not approve a road into Hoyt from 200 North. Future generations will crave and need green space. We can't snatch it all up. People live on the west side for affordability and not being packed in like sardines, among a million other things. I feel we need to see what will happen on the other side of the street before we give this developer free rein. We don't need to cut up the larger parcels with front homes and pack in more homes. We need to preserve these kinds of areas. We're already jam-packed over here in the area with the bleed over from the TSA zones, which we need to amend, and we need to get rid of the point system. Thank you.
And next we have Nigel Swaby, followed by Kiko Jones, and then Nikki Stevens. Nigel,
my
you're unmuted.
Good evening, City Council members. My name is Nigel Swaby, and I am calling in support of this zone change. A lot of work has already gone into this project. The road that Michelle just spoke of has already been set aside and worked on. The infrastructure to the project has also been put in place. I believe that the ownership has changed. The entitlement on the lots has also taken place. So a lot of work has already gone into this. It seems, based on the zone change request, that it's reasonable. I would ask that the developer reach out to the community, to the neighbors in that area, and update them of their plans, and also return to the community council in the area to let us know exactly what they have in place. But in general, I support this change. I can't see that anything more than what's already been put in place is going to occur at that site. Thank you.
And now we will hear from Kiko Jones, followed by Nikki Stevens, and then Carlos Martinez. Kiko, you're now unmuted.
Okay, hi, my name is Keiko. I live in Fair Park neighborhood, and I'm speaking against the zoning change for these properties. First of all, the property along facing 200 North, rezoning is not necessary if, you know, the owner wants to preserve the single family home, which is there. Why does he or she want to change the zoning? And our area is encroached by TSA zone and just getting so difficult to live in. This area was still affordable places. I mean, affordable place for people to own homes, and it's totally destroying. And if we allow zoning change, you never know what happens next. So SR3 comes, and the next thing, you never know. The city lacks the transparency because I live near townhomes at the east end of Fair Park. And my home, along with 7 other homes, were in SR1A. And then today I checked and the zoning had changed to SR3. I don't know how it happened. I was never notified or asked, or, you know, there was no voice heard. The city just changed the zoning. So I just don't trust this. And also, we can't change zoning without knowing what plans are there, what's going to be there, and so on. It will be so easy for a developer to just purchase all the land and put something big. I'm really against that. Thank you.
And now we will hear from Nikki Stevens, followed by Carlos Martinez, and then Polly Hart. You're unmuted.
To remind everybody, Molly is our advocate for tonight. So,
Nikki?
all right, any concerns as we test for consensus?
Taylor?
Yeah, we will move on to Carlos.
But Taylor, before we move on to Carlos, can I ask staff to follow up with Michelle in regards to the zoning questions that she had? The city doesn't just go ahead and rezone without a proper, way of going and rezoning that property. So I'd ask that staff follow up with her, and if her property was rezoned, when it was rezoned, and go through that and give her all that public notice information.
Mr. Chair, I'll follow up with Ms. Jones on that.
Okay, thanks so much, Brian.
Keiko's comment, right? Rather than
Yes.
Michelle.
Yeah.
Correct.
Thank you.
Okay. And now moving on to Carlos Martinez, then that will be followed by Polly Hart. Carlos, you're now unmuted. Carlos, you are unmuted. Okay, we will move on to Polly Hart and then circle back around to those two. Polly, you're unmuted.
Thank you so much. My name is Polly Hart, and I live near this neighborhood. I live in the Marmalade on the other side of the tracks and the freeway. And every morning, my dog takes me for a new journey. And this summer, we have discovered this very neighborhood, and it is so beautiful. The fact that the houses are not as well kept up and have been altered more than some other neighborhoods do not detract from the history of this gorgeous neighborhood. And as it would happen, I am in love with the one house that would be saved in this development. But I want to caution you that a zoning map and a neighborhood plan is put into place for a reason. And to change the planning parcel by parcel to make way for development is not a plan. This house would be left in the middle of a development. It would lose its context. It would destroy the context of the abutting homes. And for those of you who have not walked around this neighborhood, it is an absolute gem. I want to urge you to vote against a zoning change. It will forever impact badly this neighborhood that doesn't have the luxury of a local historic district protection. Thank you so much.
Okay, next we will hear from Michael Valentine and then go back to Nikki Stevens and Carlos Martinez. Michael, you're unmuted.
Awesome. Can you guys hear me all right?
Yes, we can hear you.
Cool. Yeah, I'm just here to speak against the zoning change and in support of the Brown Berets in the West Side. It seems like every other month there's a new apartment complex they're fighting against. I'd really ask you guys to talk to the community and listen over there and build properties and development that works for the people, doesn't kick people out of their houses, that betters the West Side and not just developers. So I think just going around changing zoning like this, you know, we see this problem with the theater, with lots of things. It seems like a citywide issue, but I would just really ask you to listen to the community, listen to those people over on the West Side, and I vote against this zoning change. Thanks.
All right, and we will go back to Nikki Stevens and then Carlos Martinez. Nikki, you are
Support
unmuted.
and engagement channel, and have created like a small little group. If you'd like to join it, I'll put the name of the channel in the chat. But we're starting to meet tomorrow, but just wanted to start a discussion about this broadly, and one of
Taylor, can we send Nikki a chat message?
Yes, we have tried. I will try once more. And then
let's ask him to submit maybe in this one that we've come back to him 3 times that we'd like him to submit or her to submit their comments via email.
yeah, absolutely. Okay, we will move on to Carlos Martinez. Carlos, you are unmuted.
Yeah, this is Carlos Martinez. I just wanted to also express my opposition to the proposal. I agree with what a lot has been said. I would urge you all to vote against it. I think it would serve you right, given that the historic uneven development in this city has lasting effects. And this could be the opportunity to change the tide if you vote against this proposition. Thanks.
Okay, and that was our final comment, and we will message with Nikki to let them know that they can comment via email.
Okay, thank you very much. And thanks to everyone who made a comment this evening in regards to this. I'm going to look for a motion.
Mr. Chair, move that we close the public hearing and defer action to a later council meeting.
Second.
Motion by Councilmember Mono and second by Councilmember Ferris. Is there any discussion? Okay, here goes the roll call. Councilmember Ferris.
Yes.
Councilmember Mono.
Yes.
Councilmember Valdemoros.
Yes.
Councilmember Wharton.
Yes.
Councilmember Dugan.
Yes.
And I am a yes as well. That motion passes. Our next public hearing is item B6 regarding permitting restaurants in the public lands zoning district. Before we begin taking public comments, I'll turn the time over to Brian Fulmer, who will give us a short introduction.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is a proposal from the administration to allow restaurant uses in the public lands district. If approved by the council, restaurants would adhere to the same regulations as other permitted uses in the zone, and they would be located on lots with a minimum 20,000 square feet. That is my introduction.
Okay, Taylor, do we have any public comment?
Council Chair, we do not have any public comment for this item.
Okay, seeing no public comment, I'll look for a motion.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Councilmember Mono.
I move that we close the public hearing and adopt the ordinance. Am I allowed to do that? Oh, we have to do a second public hearing?
I don't have a second.
Second.
Motion by Councilmember Mono to close and adopt, a second by Councilmember Wharton. Is there any discussion? Okay, we'll move into roll call.
That we're okay to do that.
I'm pretty sure that we are.
It's at the council's discretion.
So Councilmember Wharton,
Yes.
Councilmember Valdemoros,
Yes.
Councilmember Dugan,
Yes.
Councilmember Mono,
Yes.
Councilmember Ferris.
Yes.
I am a yes, that motion carries. Our next public hearing is item B7 regarding a proposal for amending the city code pertaining to fence, wall, and hedge height requirements. Again, before we take public comment, I'm going to turn the time over to Nick Tarbett, Council Staff Policy Analyst, to give a short introduction.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. This petition would remove the special exception process that allows for overheight fences and to define instances when a taller fence may be approved and appropriate by right. The proposed amendments would limit fence, wall, and hedge heights to 4 feet in front yards and 6 feet in the side or rear yards for all zoning districts, except for a few specific instances, such as when a residential district abuts a non-residential district, manufacturing and extractive industry zoning districts, and public facilities and recreation facilities where greater height is necessary. That's the end of the intro.
Okay, thank you, Nick. Taylor, do we have any public comment?
Yes, Council Chair, it looks like we have 2 people here to speak to this item. The first of which will be Nigel Swaby, followed by George Chapman. Nigel, you are now unmuted.
Thank you again, Council. I am calling in again to speak in favor of this ordinance. I believe that people have property rights, and we're seeing a lot of new construction with different configurations, and it makes sense that this ordinance would be changed so that we can have residential next to other use types and protect those residents and their homes as they see fit. I urge you to support this. Thank you.
And now we will hear from George Chapman. George, you are now unmuted.
Okay, I'm against the fence height ordinance. It needs more analysis and public engagement. The adjacent restaurants issue is still there, and we also have a rooftop restaurants coming up, and that makes a 6-foot fence limit an insult. And just like putting in apartments next to homes, it's not just other than non-residential next to homes, it's super duper monster homes next to homes, and trying to limit fences to 6 foot is pretty much an insult to single family homeowners. And also please note that some of the hedges are evergreen trees and they shouldn't be threatened, but the language in this ordinance could threaten them. Also, the safety of construction fencing is lacking due to lack of transparency and negative impact on pedestrians and vehicles. Many of the new buildings that are going up have construction fencing that is not transparent, and vehicles and pedestrians can't see unless they go out into the middle of the street, and that's a problem. Also, the 4-foot limit goes against the city's ordinance to limit chaining of dogs. A 4-foot fence does not keep in big dogs, and they must be chained up if outside. And finally, the gravel pits, which are critical according to the legislature, not me, the legislature, and some other industrial uses like recyclers and possible exhaust sources need much bigger fences to decrease the dust and other exhaust sources and pollution. Those are my comments. Please don't pass the fence height ordinance. It needs more analysis.
Council Chair, we had one more person register to speak to this item, and that is Jason Seaton. Jason, you are now unmuted.
Hi, I just wanted to say that I believe, me personally, I believe there are needs in my neighborhood for possibility of higher fences than a 6-foot fence. In my yard, I would like to make it a little safer for folks to stay out of the yard, where I would like to one day put a pool. And I think a 6-foot fence isn't enough for that, along with the immediate fence around a pool. But I think there are lots of reasons why we should be able to build something a little higher in certain places. So my vote on that really is to have, we need the options. Not everyone's going to do that. There's a cost associated with that. The further you go up, the further you have to go down, meaning into the ground with a bigger foundation. So not a lot of people are going to throw tons of money at that all over the city. But there are places and times where it should be allowed. And I myself were shooting for probably an 8-foot fence eventually, even though I don't necessarily like great walls. I want to find a way to make it look a lot more pleasing in my neighborhood rather than just a straight wall. But that's me. That's not going to be everybody. So anyway, I think the options need to be there. Thank you.
And Council Chair, that was our final commenter for this item.
Thank you, Taylor, and thank you, Nigel, George, and Jason for your comments in regards to this. Seeing no other comments, I'll look for a motion.
Mr. Chair, I move that the council close the public hearing and defer action to a future council meeting.
Second.
Motion by Councilmember Mono, second by Councilmember Wharton. Is there any other discussion in regards to this? Okay, we'll roll call this. Councilmember Ferris.
Yes.
Councilmember Dugan.
Yes.
Councilmember Wharton.
Yes.
Councilmember Valdemoros.
Yes.
Councilmember Mono.
Yes.
And I am a yes, that motion passes. We are now at our last public hearing, item B8, regarding a resolution that would authorize a waiver of lease fees at the Salt Lake City International Airport to facilitate the operation of the Airport Military Service Members Lounge operated by United Service Organizations. Before we begin taking public comment, I'll turn the time over to Sam Owen, Council Staff Policy Analyst, to give a short introduction. Sam.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It might be useful for the council and public to focus on 3 aspects of the item before the council right now for a public hearing. A waiver of lease fees for the USO lounge at the airport. The USO, or United Service Organization, provides amenities. United Services Organization provides amenities for active and former United States service members, military service members. To be specific, the space at the airport is being leased, would be leased to USO without a normal lease fee. It would basically be free. And the council will consider the petition, of which this public hearing is part consideration, in the context of public benefits anticipated from the waiver and its result of the new and only USO lounge at the Salt Lake City Airport. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Taylor, do we have any public comment?
We do not have any public comment for this item.
Okay, seeing no public comment, I'll look for a motion.
Mr. Chair, I
Yes.
move the council close the public hearing and defer action to a future council meeting.
Second.
Motion by Councilmember Dugan, a second by Councilmember Ferris. Is there any other discussion? I'll say something. I'll take a moment of personal privilege. I already said this at the last work session, but I want to thank Mayor Mendenhall and Director Bill Wyatt for their work on this. You know, talking about this being on the airport, sort of quasi on the airport board, representing the council, it's something that was really important to me to see that happens. And, you know, we had just 2 people that wanted to make it happen. So thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Director Wyatt. I don't know if he's on or not, but it's really an awesome thing that we're able to do and create for those service men and women who come through our airport, on a brand new airport with a brand new USO facility. So, okay, we'll roll call this. Councilmember Mono.
Yes.
Councilmember Valdemoros.
Yes.
Councilmember Wharton.
Yes.
Councilmember Dugan.
Yes.
Councilmember Ferris.
Absolutely.
And I am a yes. Motion passes. We don't have any items for potential action this evening. We're on to item D1, questions to the mayor from the city council. Is there any questions for the mayor? Seeing none, Mayor, thanks so much for being here as usual. You know, I'm going to take another personal privilege here. You know, it's amazing to actually see a mayor here every single week, you know, and be here and take questions and do the hard things that, you know, we really didn't have for a long time. So I am extremely appreciative. Even though there aren't questions that come to you, you always show up. I was always told my entire life, 90% of life is showing up, and you definitely do that. So thank you. We are going to move on to the general comment portion. I'm just going to generalize on this. Please be respectful. No swearing. Don't be disrespectful. If you do, we'll mute your line and we'll remove you from the chat. So we're going to go through this, and Taylor Hill is still on our staff. We'll be taking the names of those who wish to comment and unmuting those lines. She'll call those names 3 at a time and then mute you and call your name. So Taylor, you can begin with the comments.
So it looks like we have about 9 people here to speak for general comment, the first of which will be Polly Hart, and then Mary Wright, and then Daniel Shelley. Polly, you're now unmuted.
Okay. On December 15th, 2020, I received an email from Parks admin Kezia Lopez titled Peanut Chair Nomination. 7 minutes later, I responded that I accepted. Historically, we vote in the January meeting prior to the January meeting when the results are announced. By the time I received my first ballot from Kezia halfway through the January meeting, the election was long over. But I was told that I needed to break a tie in the vice chair's race. And when I looked at my ballot, my name was in the vice chair's list of candidates and not chair as I had been nominated. I voted for myself and let it go. Moving on. You are all aware that during the June Peanut meeting, I had a difference of opinion about Peanut's powers and duties with Kristen Riker. Kristen agreed at my request that she would send us the ordinance that defines our role. The next day, she sent the promised document to the entire Peanut board, except me. When an astute board member pointed this out to the entire Peanut, Kristen apologized to me and stated that she had used, quote, a previous email string and thought you were on it, end quote. If that statement is true, then this was not the first Peanut email from which I have been singled out and excluded. I should note that a month ago, I had a meeting with Ashley Cleveland in which she very graciously offered numerous options to make the election right, including having a revote, and I declined. I want to be clear that I have no expectation of, any outcome by telling you all of this. I am doing it in the interest of public transparency. Whether these separate incidents all happened due to an unlucky string of bad mistakes or some other reason, that is not my business at this juncture. What you, the mayor and council, do with this information at this point is solely up to you. Thank you.
And now we will hear from Mary Wright, followed by Daniel Schelling, and then Eric Edelman. Mary, you're now unmuted.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Marianne Wright, and my comments tonight concern the ever-looming and air-polluting inland port. They continue to blow and go with no environmental constraints from anyone. And it's really, to me, a very sad thing when our children's health is at play from huge developers utilizing our taxpayer dollars. I am truly ashamed that our leaders have let this occur, and no less, they seem to celebrate it. Of great concern beyond the bad air that is foisted upon us by the inland port is also the sketchy manner of water use approvals. I am here to speak in favor of limiting the amount of water used by means of approving the temporary land use ordinance prior to its consideration for permanent adoption as a permanent ordinance. That limitation should be set, however, in my thinking, at no more than 150,000 gallons per day. Not setting such a limit gives license to squander even more of our precious resource and severely limits, in my way of thinking, the credibility of the city to ask citizens to pull back on their personal use. I thank you for your time and allowing me to make these comments.
And now we will hear from Daniel Schelling, followed by Eric Edelman, and then Paul Taylor. Daniel, you are now unmuted.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Good evening. At previous meetings, I've tried to show the council that the Foothills Trails master plan and its implementation have been deeply flawed and should be revisited. Tonight, though, I'd like to share some thoughts on how the city can move forward with an improved Foothills Trail system while at the same time protecting the natural environment of the Salt Lake foothills. According to the master plan completed at the end of 2019, the cost of constructing trails in the foothills was estimated at $42,000 per mile. At this cost, phase 2 of the Foothills Trails plan, which includes 37 miles of new trails, should cost roughly $1.56 million. However, according to a recent article published in the Salt Lake Tribune, the City Council has approved $5.3 million for phase 2 of the Foothills Trails plan at an average cost of $142,000 per mile. This suggests that the cost of building trails has increased 240% over the last 2 years. Simple calculations indicate even if the cost of building trails in the foothills has increased by 30% since the end of 2019, the total cost of building 37 miles of trails should be on the order of $2 million rather than $5.3 million. It appears then that Salt Lake City could build all of the requested trails and still have over $3 million left in the budget. I hope, therefore, that the City Council will reserve a significant portion of the $5.3 million Phase 2 Foothills Trail budget for undertaking those studies that should have been conducted in the foothills before the locations of any trails were determined, let alone built, including environmental, geological, archaeological, historical, and cultural studies. My main message to the City Council tonight is that Salt Lake City has both the funds and the time to do this correctly, and to push forward on additional trail construction without conducting prerequisite scientific studies would be a huge mistake and a disservice to the residents of the city. Thank you.
And now we will hear from Eric Edelman, followed by Paul Taylor, and then John Giles. Eric, you're now unmuted.
Thank you. Mayor Mendenhall, I'm here this evening to speak on behalf of the Trails Plan. As we all are aware, this was presented to the City Council and to you that it was a master plan, which the Parks Department has since backed away from, knowing that they did not perform the proper due diligence in constructing these trails. As we have seen throughout the entire process, it has been flawed. It has been an embarrassment to the city, and we need to act now to preserve the foothills before we continue on a process of destruction that will permanently mark our legacy on the peaks of the Wasatch, the backdrop of the city. This is your legacy, Mayor. We've seen that habitat destroyed, geology not properly mapped, and native sites not documented. It was recently brought to my attention that Native American artifacts have been discovered within feet of the Twin Peaks Trail. If the proper due diligence had been performed beforehand, we would not have destroyed native sites as such. No active maintenance has been performed. We do not have a maintenance plan in place. We see constant erosion issues that need to be addressed before the construction of any additional trails should be built. Additionally, the trails that have been mapped and presented for construction do not properly present the existing trail network and the proposed trail network. What we are getting is a manipulated plan that you have been presented and you have made your decision with. It is important moving forward that you are informed with the proper information so that we may make the correct decisions to preserve the beauty and nature of the foothills. Only by this can we preserve the habitat and find a balance in the trail construction. We all love the foothills. We want to see the best happen for the city, but just to roll out there with excavators, construct trails at will, not following any plan, is not constructive or professional. I thank you for your time, and I appreciate you taking and listening.
And now we will hear from Paul Taylor, followed by John Giles, and then Hillary Jacobs. Paul, you're now unmuted.
Hi, I was brought into the trail conversation recently by Eric Edelman, and he introduced me to Dan and Hillary Jacobs. I was running up the Dry Creek Canyon in the spring of 2019 and came across an artifact, an arrowhead that was just off the edge of the trail. And I brought this up to Eric as we were talking about the new trail sites in the foothills. And the outlet of the new trail that connects Dry Creek to the Twin Peaks area is within 5 feet of where I discovered the artifact in 2019. And I still have that in my possession. And I just thought that I would bring that to your attention, that I have that.
And now we will hear from John Giles, followed by Hillary Jacobs, and then Michael Valentine. John, you're now unmuted.
Yeah, my name is John Giles. I think the city needs to do more all it can about water conservation and trying to preserve the Great Salt Lake. Great Salt Lake is going to dry up, and it doesn't matter how much expensive land you have. It doesn't matter if you have a homeowner or you're a homeowner or a developer or a real estate agent. We'll all be out of jobs and a place to live. Our environment, all our investments and hard work will be worthless because we'll have to move. Salt Lake Valley and the surrounding 100 miles will be a death zone, blowing selenium, magnesium, and all sorts of other nasty, natural occurring and man-made toxic pollutants will make northern Utah inhospitable. If you don't think this can happen, do some research about Owens Lake in California and any other number of lakes that have dried up around the world. Thriving ecosystems destroyed by human greed and need without any forethought about the consequences. Everything should be done to protect the Great Salt Lake. Change the landscaping laws, put some teeth into it like you do the recycling can checkers. 90% of the lawns in the Salt Lake Valley look like putting greens. Stop building on the wetlands that are so vital to restoring and keeping the Great Salt Lake a viable place for wildlife to exist. Stop spraying poison all over the northwest quadrant. Most mosquitoes never travel more than a quarter mile from their breeding grounds. Building the prison and the port on the wetlands are two of the worst ideas that those in power have had in the last 50 years, and that's saying something because they seem to protect the powerful and the rich and the well-connected very well, lining their pockets with money provided by taxpayers' dollars to make private enterprise wealthy, all the while destroying the very environment we so dearly love and need to call our home. Growth used to be an asset that has quickly become our greatest liability. The large bottomless bank we call taxpayers' money seems to make a few well-connected very wealthy. How much money does one need? The earth is not an infinite supply of assets for greedy people. Someday the check will bounce and the account will be closed.
And now we will hear from Hillary Jacobs, followed by Michael Valentine, and then George Chapman. Hillary, you're now unmuted.
Hi, thank you. So good evening, and thank you for being here tonight. I would like to share with you a surprising update regarding the nomenclature of the Salt Lake City Foothills Trails Master Plan. Did you know that it's no longer being called a master plan? In an email dated September 1st, 2021, an employee in the Trails and Natural Lands Division wrote, quote, "The master plan is actually called the Salt Lake City Foothills Trails System Plan, which is more of a vision and does not address management, which would be a separate management plan," unquote. So when did the name master plan change? And who authorized this name change? Did you know this happened? What was the motivation? Is this normal protocol for city staff to change the descriptor of a document after it has been reviewed and adopted by you, the council? Look at the Parks and Public Lands website. Under the tab labeled Salt Lake City Foothills Trail System Master Plan, the document is called the Salt Lake City Foothills Trail System Plan. So is it or is it not a master plan? If you go to the Alta Planning website, you can find a short summary of the Salt Lake City Foothills Trails Master Plan project. Clearly, a master plan is what Alta Planning was developing. Parks and Public Lands employees have insisted for months they have a master plan that is unalterable, and now they deny it being a master plan at all. I think it's time to find out why. I don't imagine many city offices surreptitiously change the names of documents adopted by their city councils unless they have a reason to do so. Something to hide? Something to justify? Has anything else in the document been changed? You may want to review and compare your hard copies of the master plan with what is now presented on the Parks and Public Lands website. I wonder what surprises you may find. Thanks.
Okay, now we have Michael Valentine and then George Chapman. Michael, you're now unmuted.
Yeah, hi again. So I just want to read a quote out here. The only reason the Utah Pantages Theater is not on the National Historic Registry already is because the Salt Lake City never submitted it. That's from Paul Szymborski, theater expert for the League of Historic Theaters, one of the great experts on the country on this topic. And today's an exciting day because we're changing that. We just filed the application for the theater for the National Registry and to be a Salt Lake City landmark. It's about time. It should have been done a long time ago. The Kearns Building's been on the registry since the 80s. The Capitol Theater's been on since the 70s. You guys, for the last several years now, have been claiming the theater is not historic from the expertise of Danny Waltz, who have restored 0 historic theaters and been discrediting experts. Now is the time to change your tone because you're discrediting the state historical office. You're discrediting the federal government who thinks the theater is historic. So again, put your expertise in check. You guys aren't experts here. Do the right thing, support the theater. It needs to become a Salt Lake City landmark, it needs to be restored. Again, I'd also like to mention the trails here. This is the first time I'm hearing about this, but it's not a surprise because you guys really like to ignore master plans. The theaters and the downtown master plan specifically says to repurpose and reimagine the theater as a cultural and activity generator. Luxury apartments aren't a cultural activity generator. So stop ignoring your master plan for the theater. Stop ignoring your master plan on trails. I support the stopping of building these trails and discovering and documenting historical and indigenous artifacts. That's just abhorrent that this hasn't been done before. First time I'm hearing about that. And yeah, I also support the comments about protecting the Great Salt Lake. That's a very serious thing. And I think you guys need to pay attention to that. But yeah, it's time to realize that theater is historic and stop ignoring national experts. We're going to get people into the theater next We're gonna get real numbers on this. The numbers have been inflated by $40 million. We can prove this. It takes like an hour or two to have these people in there. We're gonna get them in. Stop denying reality here. Support the people. You guys aren't put into power here by developers. This isn't the city council for Hines.
Time.
And now we will hear from George Chapman. George, you're now unmuted.
Okay, if the shelters in this city are crime magnets, according to the chief's presentation this afternoon, remember, why is Ballpark being given another shelter to add to the two already there and another nearby without more police patrol? Ballpark needs more police patrols. Crime is exponentially increasing everywhere in Ballpark. You just heard it this afternoon. Remember Jefferson Apartments next to the park? That's another crime magnet. And we don't have the police to patrol it. On another issue, important, according to the survey, housing. The city seems to be targeting single-family home areas for increasing density, but that's only 12% of the city. The big source of affordable housing emergency is this city's government, since 80% of the property of this city is not allowed to have housing. This city could and should open up the tens of thousands of acres of land that could and should have housing to home builders. Not sure if this city should be pushing more apartments, since the city approved around 1,500 apartments last year, but only 63 detached homes. I don't want my city to become Apartmentville, USA. Without detached homes, the American dream, people will drive and create more pollution. Tens of thousands of acres could create almost 100,000 housing units if this city got out of the way and allowed housing in more than the 20% of the city that is allowed to have housing. Open up to allow builders to build housing. Those are my comments.
And that was our final general comment this evening.
Okay, thank you for all the comments this evening. We'll move straight into item E1 regarding, this is all new business, regarding meeting remotely without an anchor location. So I'll look for a motion.
A motion sheet.
I'm sorry, there may not be. The motion would be to support the decision.
I got it. Cindy? Thank you. Mr. Chair, I move that we ratify the determination of the chair to continue to meet remotely without an anchor location due to the ongoing threat of the corona pandemic.
Second.
Or COVID pandemic.
Motion
Corona, long time. That was vintage 2020.
Motion by Councilmember Wharton, second by Councilmember Ferris. Any discussion into this? We'll roll call this. Councilmember Valdemoros?
Yes.
Councilmember Dugan?
Yes.
Councilmember Mono?
Yes.
Councilmember Wharton?
Yes.
Councilmember Ferris?
Yes.
I am a yes. That motion passes. We're on to our second new business item, E2, regarding a resolution that would authorize the pledge of supplemental sales tax and use tax revenues to the payment of the city's sales and excise tax revenue bonds. I'll look for a motion.
Mr. Chair, move that the council adopt a resolution authorizing the pledge of supplemental sales and use tax revenues for the debt payment of sales and excise tax revenue bonds and providing the related matters. I'm going to also want to add adopting the resolution does not commit the city to spend funding our future revenues on debt payments for current or future bonds. The resolution would allow that option in the future. The city council would need to approve such a debt payment in a budget opening. This would allow.
Sorry. Thank you, Councilmember Dugan. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilmember Ferris. Is there any discussion to this? Okay, seeing none, we'll roll call this. Councilmember Mono.
Yes.
Councilmember Valdemoros.
Yes.
Councilmember Wharton.
Yes.
Councilmember Dugan.
Yes.
Councilmember Ferris.
Yes.
And I am a yes. That motion passes. We're on to unfinished business section of our agenda. Item F1 is regarding an ordinance that would amend sections of the Salt Lake City Code pertaining to the Racial Equity and Policing Commission. I'll look for a motion.
Mr. Chair, I move that the council adopt the ordinance changes needed to create and organize a Racial Equity and Policing Commission as one of the city's ongoing boards and commissions.
Second.
Thank you, Councilmember Dugan, for making that motion, and Councilmember Wharton for making the second. Is there any discussion? Roll call this. Councilmember Valdemoros.
Yes.
Councilmember Ferris.
Yes.
Councilmember Dugan.
Yes.
Councilmember Wharton.
Yes.
Councilmember Mono.
Yes.
And I am a yes. That motion passes. Our second unfinished business item, F2, is regarding an ordinance that would rename the People's Freeway Park located at 1560 Southwest Temple to the Ballpark Playground. I'll look for a motion.
Mr. Chair, I move that the council adopt the ordinance amending Chapter 15-350 Salt Lake City Code to rename People's Freeway Park Ballpark Playground.
Second.
Second.
Motion by Councilmember Mono and second by Councilmember Ferris. We'll roll call this. Councilmember Dugan.
Yes.
Councilmember Mono.
Yes.
Councilmember Valdemoros.
Yes.
Councilmember Wharton.
Yes.
Councilmember Ferris.
Yes.
And I am a yes. That motion passes. Our next unfinished business item is F3 regarding the Utah State Infrastructure Bank loan application. I'll look for a motion.
Mr. Chair, I move that the council adopt the resolution authorizing the city to enter into a loan with the State Infrastructure Bank for $7 million to finance a portion of a parking structure located between 4th and 5th West and 6th and 7th South.
Motion by Councilmember Wharton. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion, a second by Councilmember Mono. Is there any discussion in regards to this? Yes,
Is
Councilmember.
it too late, Mr. Chair?
Yes, Councilmember Valdemoros.
Is it too late to ask a question about the repayment in case there is a default by, like, the liability of the city for the repayment of this loan? If there's ever a default, I'm not clear yet on that part.
I can take a stab at that unless there's someone else. Jennifer had to step away.
Thank you, Cindy. Would you mind?
Yeah, happy to. We have the commitment of the state. It's the same as if the council is approving something like, say, police officer salaries. That's subject to appropriation the next year, and that's the case with this amount that the state is committed to the city. So there are ongoing obligations. Technically, the governmental entities are not, they're not required to pay them, but it damages the reputation and the ability for entities to bond and things like that if they don't keep up their obligations. So it would be really quite unusual if this were not funded by the state. So technically the answer is that yes, the city would be liable if the state doesn't pay, but it is quite unlikely that that would be the situation. So it's okay.
Does that help,
All right.
Councilmember Valdemoros?
Yeah, but okay, so yes on that side of that, but the other way around, the city is not liable if maybe I just need to, like, yeah, that's fine. Okay.
Yeah, it does take a certain element of trust.
Okay.
Councilmember Dugan, you look like you had a question or discussion.
I just wanted to make a point before the vote. I looked a lot at this and asked a lot of questions about this parking lot. I just want to let the public know that the parking lot will actually reduce the footprint of parking lots in the area. It's not going to increase the parking or increase the footprint of parking. It's actually going to decrease the footprint of parking in this general area. So I'm supportive of it because it's not going to increase the parking footprint.
That's extremely helpful in this conversation, Councilmember Dugan. I appreciate that. So I just want to go back over, for my own sake, Councilmember Wharton, you made the motion, didn't you? And Councilmember Mono, did you second that? Okay, I'm going to roll call that. Councilmember Ferris.
Yes.
Councilmember Valdemoros.
Yes.
Councilmember Dugan.
Yes.
Councilmember Wharton.
Yes.
Councilmember Mono.
Yes.
And I am a yes. That motion passes. Last, we are on section G, the consent portion of our agenda. I'll look for a motion.
Mr. Chair, I move to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Motion by Councilmember Wharton, second by Councilmember Valdemoros. Is there any discussion to the consent agenda? Seeing none, I will roll call this, and I'm grateful for all of those board appointments that we made today that are on this consent agenda. Councilmember Ferris.
Yes.
Councilmember Valdemoros.
Yes.
Councilmember Dugan.
Yes.
Councilmember Mono.
Yes.
Councilmember Wharton.
Yes.
And I am a yes. That motion passes. This concludes our formal city council meeting. The council's formal meeting now stands adjourned. Thanks, everyone.